Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has now entered day 20. An airstrike on a housing block in the capital, Kyiv, has killed at least 2 people. Emergency service says at least 27 people have been rescued after the 16-story building in the Ukrainian capital was hit. The mayor of the capital has also announced a 36-hour curfew. In the meantime, the prime ministers of the Czech Republic, Poland and Slovenia are traveling to Kyiv by train. The first foreign leaders to visit the Ukrainian capital since Russia invaded its neighbor last month. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky office confirmed the visit on Tuesday, but gave no further details about the gathering, which is due to take place as fighting continues on the outskirts of Kyiv and residential buildings inside the city are being shelled. At least 2 people were killed in an overnight strike. Talks between Russian and Ukrainian officials are expected to resume. Previous discussions held in person in Belarus produced no lasting routes to evacuate civilians or agreements to end the fighting. The European Union, a political and economic union of 27 member states that are located primarily in Europe, is set to adopt more sanctions against Russia. We have more updates on the war in this report.
Russian forces have continued their airstrikes on Kyiv and other heavily populated cities in Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky has also accused Russia of bombing civilian targets while laying siege to cities such as Mariupol in the southeast of the country. Among the deaths reported are a pregnant woman and her baby injured in the Russian airstrike on a hospital last week, which prompted outrage around the world, and at least 5 people have been killed in the attacks on Kyiv. There were 3 separate attacks on Ukraine's capital early on Tuesday.
Відповідальність за воєнні злочини для російських військових неминуча. Відповідальність за свідомо створену гуманітарну катастрофу в українських містах неминуча. Увесь світ бачить, що відбувається в Маріуполі.
In view of this, Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, addressing an extraordinary session of peace via video link, has demanded that the Russian Federation be immediately ousted from the Council of Europe. The Prime Minister also accused Russian leaders of carrying out gross violations of the laws of war, but said punishments for what he called terrorism and genocide could not be avoided.
For the leaders of the Russian Federation, there are no values at all. The Russian armed forces behave like terrorists. They bombard schools, kindergartens, hospitals. They kill children. They take them hostages.
Meanwhile, satellite imagery on Monday showed extensive damage to the besieged port of Mariupol, home to the worst humanitarian crisis of the Ukraine conflict. The images taken by the private U.S. satellite firm Maxar showed damage to buildings and fires burning in the southern city. Away from that, Justice Secretary Dominic Raab is visiting the International Criminal Court today to offer the UK's help in gathering evidence to prosecute President Vladimir Putin for possible war crimes in Ukraine. Mr. Raab will meet the court's prosecutor, British lawyer Karim Khan, in The Hague to offer technical support in bringing those responsible for the war crimes in Ukraine to justice.
There also needs to be a 4th strand on accountability, making sure that anyone who commits war crimes in Ukraine is held to account, and the commanders on the ground, those that may be receiving illegal orders as well as those in the Kremlin, need to know that right now.
Away from The Hague, unnamed U.S. officials told multiple news outlets that China has signaled willingness to provide military assistance to Russia. The Chinese Foreign Ministry accused the U.S. of spreading disinformation. Russia has also denied asking Beijing for military help. The exchanges came before top U.S. and Chinese officials met in Rome.
We have been very clear, both privately with Beijing, publicly with Beijing, that there would be consequences for any such support.
And protesters squatting inside a London mansion suspected of belonging to a Russian oligarch are demanding the house be used to house Ukrainian refugees. The large mansion in Belgrave Square was adorned with a banner which read, "This property has been liberated," as well as a Ukrainian flag. The industrialist was added to the government's sanctions list on 10 March 2022. and tens of thousands of troops from across Europe and North America are training together in harsh climatic conditions as part of Norwegian exercise Cold Response 2022. The exercise is defensive and long-planned, and it demonstrates NATO's ability to respond decisively to any threat from any direction. Around 30,000 troops from 27 nations, including NATO's close partners Finland and Sweden, are taking part in the exercise, as well as about 220 aircraft and more than 50 vessels. The exercise shows NATO's ability to deploy tens of thousands of forces to the high north, while at the same time NATO is reinforcing the eastern part of the alliance to shield NATO against any aggression. And finally, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on Monday expressed condolences to a Fox News correspondent whose colleague, British-American journalist Benjamin Hall, was recently injured while reporting in Ukraine. Psaki also spoke on repercussions for the death of American journalist Mr. Renault. Mr. Renault was in a car en route to report on Ukrainian refugees trying to evacuate when the vehicle was ambushed by Vladimir Putin's troops, according to Ukrainian officials.
The president lead the world in putting in place consequences, putting in place repercussions and steps in response to the actions of Russia, the brutal actions that have certainly impacted Ukrainian people and now have certainly impacted some Americans. But in terms of next steps or what the next consequence would be, I don't have anything to preview for you at this point in time.